These bags used to mean something. A Chanel on your arm was a statement. A Louis Vuitton Neverfull was the ultimate flex. And a Gucci Marmont? That was proof you had arrived. But something has quietly shifted. The very bags that once sparked waitlists and sold-out launches are now sitting on shelves, discounted to move and ignored by the people who used to want them most. This is not a sales dip. This is a reckoning. Today, we are breaking down 10 designer bags nobody is buying anymore, even on sale. And number 1 will leave you stunned. Number 10. Michael Kors Jet Set Tote. There was a time when the Michael Kors Jet Set Tote was the entry ticket to designer status. That gold MK logo, the Saffiano leather, the structured silhouette. It was everywhere. Airports, brunch tables, office commutes. You could not scroll through Instagram without spotting one. And for a while, that was the point. Owning a jet set meant you had taste, but you did not have to sell a kidney to prove it. It was aspirational luxury for the masses. But that same accessibility became the curse. Capri Holdings, Michael Kors's parent company, reported revenue drops of over 12% in 2024, with operating margins collapsing from 21% to under 5%. And the Jet Set Tote took the hardest hit. Walk into any Walmart or outlet mall and you will find it marked down 70, sometimes 80% off. A bag that once retailed for nearly $500 now sells for under $100. That is not a sale, that is a clearance event. And the numbers only tell part of the story. The real damage is perception. When a luxury bag becomes synonymous with markdown bins and parking lot pop-up shops, it stops feeling like luxury at all. Middle-class shoppers still buy it. But the aspirational crowd, the ones who gave the brand its shine, they have already moved on. Michael Kors did not collapse because the quality got worse. It collapsed because exclusivity vanished. When everyone can afford it, no one wants it. And that is exactly where the Jet Set Tote lives now, not in closets of the wealthy, but in outlet carts of the curious. Because in luxury, visibility is not power. Visibility is poison. If Michael Kors shows what happens when accessibility goes too far, the next bag proves that even hype can rot from overexposure. Number 9. Gucci GG Marmont. If there was ever a bag that defined the hype era, it was the Gucci GG Marmont. That quilted chevron leather, the gold double G clasp, the instant recognizability. For years, this was the trophy bag. The one influencers posed with on marble staircases. The one you bought to signal you had officially made it. And Gucci rode that wave hard. The Marmont was not just a bag. It was a cultural moment. But cultural moments, by definition, do not last. Kering, Gucci's parent company, reported sales drops of over 23% in 2024. Operating income was cut nearly in half. And the Marmont became a symbol of everything that went wrong. What was once exclusive became exhausting. Every Instagram post, every YouTube haul, every airport sighting, they all blurred together until the bag felt less like a flex and more like a uniform. Then came the creative instability. Alessandro Michele departed in late 2022. His replacement, Sabato De Sarno, brought a quieter aesthetic, but by early 2025, he too was gone. That kind of revolving door does not inspire confidence. It signals a brand in crisis, unsure of what it wants to be. And the resale market agrees. The Marmont now holds around 70% of its original value. Compare that to Hermès, which often exceeds 100%, and the decline becomes painfully clear. Gucci is no longer the aspirational peak it once was. It is what you buy before you know better. The Marmont still looks beautiful, but beauty alone cannot save a bag from irrelevance when the world has already moved on. But if the Marmont suffered from overexposure, the next bag shows what happens when ubiquity meets counterfeit culture. Number 8. Louis Vuitton Neverfull. For over a decade, the Louis Vuitton Neverfull was the undisputed queen of everyday luxury. A tote so versatile, so timeless, so recognizable that it became shorthand for success. You saw it in boardrooms, at school pickups, slung over the shoulders of women who seemed to have it all figured out. And then, somewhere along the way, you started seeing it everywhere else too. That was the problem. The Neverfull became so popular that Louis Vuitton implemented a waitlist system in 2023, not to create hype, but to slow down the flood. What was once a symbol of refined taste now signaled something different. Not exclusivity, just participation. Resale values confirm the shift. The Neverfull retains about 75% of its value, which sounds decent until you compare it to the Goyard St. Louis, which holds over 100%. For a bag in the same price tier, that gap tells a story. The Neverfull is no longer aspirational, it is expected. And then there is the counterfeit crisis. The Neverfull is the most counterfeited luxury bag in the world. Entire authentication guides exist just for spotting fakes. When you cannot tell the real from the replica at a glance, the status signal breaks down completely. Louis Vuitton tried raising prices. The bag jumped from around $1,200 in 2015 to over $2,000 by 2025. But you are now paying more for something that no longer feels rare. The Neverfull is not a bad bag. It is a practical, well-made tote. But in the hierarchy of luxury, practical is not enough. And that is where it now sits. Respected, reliable, and no longer remarkable. The Neverfull lost its power through ubiquity. The next bag lost something even harder to recover: trust. Number 7. Balenciaga City Bag. There was a moment when the Balenciaga City Bag was the coolest thing you could carry. Slouchy leather, motorcycle-inspired, hardware, that perfectly undone rock-chic vibe. Mary-Kate Olsen had one. Kate Moss made it iconic. It was the anti-Birkin, the bag for people who wanted to look expensive without trying too hard. And for years, it worked. The City Bag was not just popular, it was a movement, but trends age, and this one aged badly. By the time Balenciaga tried to revive the City in 2024 with updated hardware and new leathers, the damage was already done. The slouchy silhouette that once felt rebellious now felt dated. Fashion had moved on to structured shapes, minimalist lines, quiet luxury. The City Bag looked like a relic from a messier era. And then there was the scandal. In November 2022, Balenciaga released a campaign that triggered immediate and brutal backlash. The brand dropped from number 1 to number 11 on the list index within weeks. They lost over 100,000 Instagram followers. Stores were vandalized. Celebrities publicly distanced themselves. And while the controversy was not about the City Bag specifically, it tainted everything the brand touched. Sales in the United States, United Kingdom, and Middle East were described as heavily impacted for quarters after. Search interest for the City Bag spiked briefly in 2024, likely from the relaunch, but conversion did not follow. People were curious. They were not buying. The City Bag still has admirers. Vintage versions from the Ghesquière era still command respect. But the modern iteration feels like a brand trying to recapture a moment that already passed. And in fashion, there is nothing less cool than trying too hard to be cool again. While Balenciaga is still recovering from reputational damage, the next bag shows what happens when a revival burns too bright too fast. Subscribe if you want more videos exposing what the luxury industry never says out loud. Number 6. Dior Saddlebag. When Dior relaunched the saddlebag in 2018, the internet practically broke. Search interest exploded by over 7,000%. Influencers fought for early access. Wait lists stretched into months. It was the comeback story luxury dreams are made of. A bag from the early 2000s, resurrected and repackaged for a new generation. And for a brief, blazing moment, it worked. But revivals have a shelf life. The saddlebag's second act burned fast and hot, and then it simply stopped mattering. By 2020, the initial hype had plateaued. By 2023, resale prices started to soften. And by 2025, the saddle was no longer the conversation, it was background noise. Part of the problem was overproduction. Dior leaned hard into the success, releasing iteration after iteration, new colors, new materials, new collaborations. What was once exciting became exhausting. The bag that felt fresh in 2018 felt repetitive by 2022. And when a revival product starts to feel stale, it ages faster than a legacy piece ever would. Search data tells the story. Saddlebag interest peaked in early 2025 and then cratered. Meanwhile, this Lady Dior, a true heritage piece, maintains steady demand. Revivals cannot compete with originals when the nostalgia fades. And that is the cruel irony. Dior did everything right. The campaign was flawless. The celebrity placement was perfect. The timing was impeccable. But revivals are borrowed time. You can resurrect a silhouette, but you cannot resurrect the cultural moment that made it matter. The saddlebag is still beautiful, but it no longer carries the weight it once did. And in luxury, weight is everything. The saddle proved revivals expire. The next bag shows how even good intentions cannot survive saturation. Number 5. Prada Nylon Re-Edition Bags. Prada's Re-Edition bags were supposed to be the perfect blend of nostalgia and sustainability. Recycled nylon, archival designs, a price point that felt almost accessible for Prada. When the Re-Edition 2005 launched, it was an instant sensation. Search interest surged over 130%. By 2022, it was the #1 most purchased bag across multiple resale platforms. Influencers loved it, editors praised it. The crossbody style became the silhouette of the moment. And then, almost as quickly, the moment passed. By late 2024, search interest for the crossbody versions had collapsed to nearly zero. The bag that once symbolized ironic luxury had become just another nylon pouch. Too common, too expected, too everywhere. What killed the Re-Edition was not quality. Prada's craftsmanship remained impeccable. It was saturation. The bag was everywhere. Every fashion week, street-style shot, every influencer unboxing, every airport terminal from LAX to Heathrow. When a bag becomes that visible, it stops feeling special. And the Re-Edition's relatively accessible price point only accelerated the problem. Luxury that everyone can reach for stops being luxury. The sustainability angle could not save it either. Recycled nylon is admirable, but it is not a moat. Other brands have since adopted similar messaging. Prada's early mover advantage evaporated. Today, the Re-Edition tote versions still move reasonably well. But the crossbody styles that defined the hype cycle? They are sitting. Prada created a product that was genuinely innovative, environmentally conscious, and aesthetically on trend. But the very success that made it popular made it forgettable. In luxury, scarcity is survival. And the Re-Edition forgot that rule. The Re-Edition drowned in its own success, but the next brand shows what happens when logos replace identity. Number 4. Fendi Monogram Bags. Fendi's Baguette is one of the most iconic bags in fashion history. Carrie Bradshaw made it a legend. The brand has been celebrating it for nearly 3 decades. And to this day, the Baguette remains a genuine classic. But here is the thing. The Baguette is not what is hurting Fendi. It is everything around it. Over the past several years, Fendi leaned hard into its FF monogram, plastering the interlocking logo across bags, accessories, and ready-to-wear. The idea was brand visibility. The result was brand fatigue. When your logo appears on everything from bucket hats to beach towels, the bags start to feel less like luxury and more like merchandise. Price increases compounded the issue. Fendi raised prices by 8 to 10% annually between 2022 and 2024. But those increases came alongside frequent discounting at outlets and department stores. That combination is toxic. You are telling customers the bag is worth more while simultaneously proving it is not. Resale data confirms the disconnect. The baguette holds value because of its heritage, but newer monogram-heavy designs depreciate quickly. They are not investments. They are impulse purchases dressed up as luxury. And the market has shifted. Quiet luxury is ascendant. Bottega's intrecciato weave, the rose understated elegance, Loro Piana's whisper wealth aesthetic. In that context, a bag covered in logos feels out of step. It is not that Fendi lost its craftsmanship. The leather is still gorgeous, but the design language has become a liability. The baguette will likely survive forever. It earned that status. But the rest of Fendi's monogram lineup? It is starting to look like a warning. When logos become wallpaper, value disappears. Fendi's logo, Overload, backfired. But the next brand shows what happens when every product in your lineup looks exactly the same. Number 3. Saint Laurent monogram, chain bags. Saint Laurent has a problem. Actually, it has several, but they all look suspiciously similar. The Loulou, the Kate, the Envelope, the College. Walk into any Saint Laurent boutique, and you will see row after row of quilted leather bags, with the same interlocking YSL clasp and the same gold chain strap. They are beautiful, they are well made, and they are almost impossible to tell apart. That sameness has become a liability. Kering reported that Saint Laurent's revenue declined 4% in 2023, then dropped another 9% in 2024. Operating income fell nearly 40%. Margins collapsed from 30% to just over 20%, and wholesale plummeted 35% in the final quarter of 2024 alone. The problem is not quality, it is identity. When every bag in your lineup looks like a variation of the same theme, nothing stands out. The Loulou was supposed to be the star. Instead, it became one of many. Customers who bought the Kate felt no urgency to buy the College. Why would they? They already owned that silhouette in slightly different packaging. Compare that to competitors who understand iconography. Hermès has the Birkin. Chanel has the flap. Bottega has the pouch. Each is instantly recognizable, singular, irreplaceable. Saint Laurent has a category, not a hero. The brand seems to know it. In early 2025, Kering announced a new CEO, signaling a strategic reset. But resets take time. And in the meantime, those monogram chain bags continue to sit. Still elegant, still well crafted. But no longer essential. In a market flooded with options, being good is not enough. You have to be unmistakable. And Saint Laurent forgot how. While Saint Laurent struggles with sameness, the next bag shows what happens when even Chanel cannot will a product into icon status. Number 2. Chanel Gabrielle bag. In 2017, Chanel launched the Gabrielle with the full force of its marketing machine. Celebrity campaigns, runway placements. The unmistakable message that this was the next Chanel icon. Named after Coco herself, the Gabrielle was supposed to bridge heritage and modernity. Mixed metal hardware, a slouchy hobo shape. The option to wear it 7 different ways. It had all the makings of a future classic, except it never became one. By early 2023, Chanel quietly discontinued the Gabrielle line. The reason was brutally simple. People were not buying it. The bag failed to connect emotionally with Chanel's core customer. Where the classic flap and the boy bag carry decades of cultural weight, the Gabrielle felt like an experiment. The mixed hardware confused some buyers. The hobo silhouette lacked the structured elegance Chanel loyalists expected. And in a brand built on timelessness, confusion is fatal. Resale tells the final story. The Gabrielle originally retailed around $5,000. Today, you can find them on consignment for between $2,500 and $4,800. Compare that to the classic flap, which often sells above retail, and the gap is devastating. Discontinuation does not always create scarcity value. Sometimes it just confirms what the market already knew. There is a painful irony here. Chanel almost never misses. The 19 bag took off. The 22 bag found its audience. But the Gabrielle simply never resonated. It looked different. It felt different. And in luxury, different only works when it also feels inevitable. The Gabrielle never did. And now it lives in the archives, a cautionary tale about the limits of marketing when the product does not deliver. Even Chanel could not force a bag into icon status. But the next brand shows what happens when you sacrifice your entire identity for volume. Number 1. Coach Signature Logo Bags. There was a time when Coach meant something. American craftsmanship, quiet sophistication, the brand your mother carried before you even knew what designer meant. Coach was the original accessible luxury, the gateway drug before gateway drugs were everywhere. And for decades, it worked. The leather was gorgeous, the hardware was solid, the reputation was unimpeachable. And then came the outlets. Coach's pivot to mass distribution in the 2000s was spectacularly successful in the short term and catastrophic in the long. The brand flooded outlet malls with logo-covered bags, totes stamped with the signature C pattern, sold at 70% off to anyone who walked through the door. Sales soared. Prestige evaporated. Today, Coach signature bags are not just discounted. They are synonymous with discounting. Walk into any outlet and you will find stacks of them, piled high, marked down, waiting. That image is impossible to shake. You cannot charge luxury prices when your product lives next to the food court. Tapestry, Coach's parent company, tried to course correct. They hired Stuart Vevers, launched collaborations, invested in marketing. Some of it worked. The Tabby bag earned critical praise. But the signature line remains damaged beyond repair. It is no longer seen as entry-level luxury. It is seen as no-level luxury at all. And that is the real tragedy. Coach still makes beautiful products. The craftsmanship is still there. But perception is reality in fashion. And the perception of Coach signature is outlets, markdowns, and a brand that sold its soul for volume. If there is a lesson in this entire list, Coach is the clearest example. You can survive a bad collection. You can survive a scandal. But you cannot survive becoming ordinary. Once a luxury brand loses its mystique, the climb back is nearly impossible. And for Coach signature, that climb has not even started. Because in luxury, you are either rare or you are irrelevant. And Coach chose irrelevance one clearance rack at a time.